Details have emerged on an explosive Baltimore Ravens closed-door meeting. We talk about what was said, what happened, some health concerns arising around Justin Tucker, and so much more coming up on this edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin IceShaker, a Ravens Wire here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, free and available all podcasting platforms, including video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your shows. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, so Monday through Friday. We bring you Ravens news, analysis, updates, and more. Plus, we have bonus episodes, go live after every Ravens game, and piece of big news. We got a lot coming your way. Of course, on Locked On Ravens over the final 4 weeks of the regular season into the playoffs and beyond. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Here with us, midweek edition of the show, it is Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast. And Sam, happy the Ravens are coming out of the bye week. It's good to have Ravens football back. John Harbaugh very pleased with the health situation for Baltimore, with only Sanusi Kane not practicing on Monday or being out there. And now you have an opportunity, if you're the Ravens, to be able to not only establish some momentum heading into the playoffs, but I still think the AFC North is within the Ravens' grasp, especially when you compare the Ravens to Steelers schedules.
Oh, yeah, and I'm very happy that this is finally back. You know, Ravens football last week was kind of boring, but if you're a Ravens fan, you're looking forward to the next 4 weeks. And you're right, the AFC North title is still in the grabs. Steelers have a gauntlet of a schedule, first with the Eagles, then with the Chiefs, and the Ravens sandwich between those two. So the Steelers are going to find out what they're worth, and the Ravens will have an opportunity to steal a potential AFC North title if they were to get those 4 games under the W column.
It's crazy to think that, you know, the Steelers now have a 3-game lead on the Ravens, 2 in the win column, and obviously the tiebreaker at the moment. But Steelers have a tough week against Philly this week. And if they lose to the Eagles and the Ravens beat the Giants, which everybody expects them to, that's 1 game shaved off. And then if the Ravens beat the Steelers the next week, all of a sudden you're tied again. So it's crazy to think how much this could change over the next couple of weeks. But Sam, something that has changed for this Ravens team has been their defense. Obviously, it was a struggle at the start of the season. There were a lot of execution issues. Zach Orr was getting a lot of flack for a lot of different things as well. And you and I talked about it. Something had to change, whether it was personnel, execution, whatever it was. Well, apparently, there was a very explosive, in a good way, apparently, closed-door meeting that happened defensively. And everything just kind of got aired out, it feels like. And Sam Cohn of the Baltimore Sun put out a very detailed piece on it. So if you want more information than what we talk about here, and we're going to get to as much of it as we can, obviously, be sure to go check out Sam's article. He did a great job with it. But apparently, this was about a 90-minute meeting, hour-and-a-half meeting, a couple of Tuesdays ago. And in November, I think it was maybe before the Steelers game, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly when. But there was a lot of just truths being spoken, hard truths. And Ardarius Washington talked about it, and he said, excuse my language, but it really was like, you know, and we're a family-friendly show on Locked On Ravens, so we can't say all the things that Ardarius said. But he's essentially like, in the article says, you know, F everybody, F everything else is going around. Let us play together as one. And that was one of the main focuses of the meeting. So, Sam, we obviously know about 2012, and you and I have talked about how this is a little bit different this year, comparing the two. But, hey, players-only meetings sometimes, or closed-door meetings as this one was with Zach Orr and everybody, those can be a good thing. And sometimes, you know, you can get explosive in those. You can share some hard truths. You can hold people accountable, and we'll get into more details. But I think that something like this is needed. And based off of the results, it seems to have worked.
Yeah, you know, player-only meetings happen more often than people realize. A lot of it doesn't get out there. But in this situation for the Ravens, it doesn't happen very often, because usually if you're having a player or defensive side only meeting or offensive side only meeting, it means that you're not a very good football team. But the Ravens are typically not in that realm. But as we mentioned, the defense had to make a change. This meeting happened, and of course, the players got to speak out. You know, the coaches got to say their piece. It's a good thing. I think it's going to be something that's going to, and we saw the transition after that Bengals game, which is, I believe, when that meeting happened. It's a good thing that it happened, and it definitely changed the fortune for the Ravens. Now we're waiting for the offense to kind of get back to the speed, and you got those two working together. Championship is not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and Sam does note, as you mentioned, that yes, the meeting happened after the Thursday Night Football win over Cincinnati. That game still 470 yards and 5 touchdowns, just an unbelievably poor defensive game from them. And Sam notes that Zach Orr didn't sleep much. He was back at Owings Mills the following morning, and they had the meeting 4 days later, closed door, open forum. So you mentioned it. Everybody got to say their piece. Obviously, even Zach Orr himself asked, what can I do? That's part of it too. And guys spoke up. Obviously, it was more veteran led than anything else. You guys like Kyle Van Noy in the meeting, and Marlon Humphrey, Roquan Smith saying their piece, and Brent Urban, obviously, who's a big vet on that defensive line, had his fair share as well. But Zach Orr has acknowledged, and I think he's acknowledged this both publicly and privately, that he has been a part of this, both good and bad. And now that we see the defense turning around, it's a big thing, because it's a lot of stuff where it's the soul searching aspect. We use that word a lot, Sam. We use that phrase a lot. It's about soul searching, figuring out what goes wrong, and sitting down and having tough conversations. And sometimes those conversations can just kind of be like in passing, okay, this is what we did wrong. Here's how we can fix it. Okay, let's move on. This really felt like, based off of what you're saying, what Sam said in this article here, 90 minutes of just pure, hey, no hard feelings, but we're going to share some feelings, and they might not be so kind what's about to be said. And Malik Harrison said that he remembers a lot of hard truths being shared. And the good part about this that I really want to hit home on, and Sam, I want you to speak on this too, because I think it's really important, is the fact that guys were more willing to take accountability and hold others to a standard. So this wasn't just like you're doing this wrong and you're doing that, and you got to step it up. It's a lot of this apparently was, oh, hey, I know that I'm a part of this, and I know that I need to be better. And it's not just about a guy calling out another guy. It's about guys also taking that accountability. And for this defense, I think that's a major part of what sparked this turnaround of, it's not you pointing the finger at somebody. It's, hey, how can we be better together and get through this together? Yeah.
And I'm not going to divulge as much as I possibly could, but I will say, take a look at the timeline about when players started, not playing as much following that Bengals game after that meeting, and things that transpired after that meeting. And maybe you'll get a good idea of what probably happened in that meeting. But yeah, it was a lot of soul searching, a lot of, accountability, and also holding others to a standard. Even if you came into this league or played in on this defense maybe a year ago and had good games, had those type of plays that you probably could have had this game, but didn't for whatever reason. Those are the type of conversations that were had. And of course, Zachary Orr takes some of the criticism, but we've heard from multiple players. Zachary Orr wasn't the problem. It was, I believe, a situation where there are some players that weren't playing up to the standard in which we've noticed in previous seasons, and maybe having to take that next step, and maybe Zachary Orr having to be that guy to make those hard decisions. Maybe that falls on him. But as far as decision making, play calling, all of that stuff, that was just simply about players not being able to perform. And I think after that meeting, you saw, more accountability, more trust in the player you're playing opposite side. And I think that's going to pay huge dividends. It has already in the last 3 or 4 games, and now you'll see that escalate towards the end of the season.
And to your point about maybe who got less playing time after those meetings, if we remember what Marlon Humphrey said a couple of weeks ago about, in the quote, I'll read it again, the message kind of became a little bit clear. If you want to play ball, then we'll get you out there. If you don't, you're going to have to sit on the sidelines. And that was, everybody was kind of speculating, is this a shot at Marcus Williams? Like, what's going on? Is this Eddie Jackson? Like, where is he kind of referencing here? With this players only meeting, it kind of, closed doors meeting, open forum. It feels like, maybe we can put 2 and 2 and 4 and 4 together and make some deductions based off of that. But something else, Sam, that I thought was interesting in Sam Cohen's article, we got Sam talking about Sam's article. So we're Sam, a bunch of Sams in this segment, but a lot of it also was about how the Ravens do film study currently. And how obviously you go through positional film study, you get together with your position coaches and work through things. But apparently some of the things that happened in this meeting was, one of the things is you don't just do it in positional groups, you do full defensive film study together. And obviously that stems from one of the things noted in the article was one or two guys being out of position. Like if you don't know what's happening here or happening there, that obviously can break down an entire play. You know, want to talk about the Bengals game, multiple long Jamar Chase touchdowns where one guy misses a coverage or doesn't know an assignment. And all of a sudden you got Jamar Chase running 60, 70 yards down the sideline for a touchdown. So it's also about communication, not just on the field, but how you prepare for these games. And I think it's a good thing that apparently now it's not just positionally you're doing this, but you also have group defensive film studies so that these players can understand more about, hey, now I know what this guy's doing on the back end, even though I'm a pass rusher. Or, hey, now I know what a middle linebacker's assignment is when I'm trying to cover the deep half of the field. Like that, I think is really important because, yes, positionally, you got to be on your P's and Q's. But if you're on it positionally, but you don't know what's going on behind you or in front of you, that can cause other issues.
Absolutely. And you saw it when I looked at film about the Ravens defensive struggles, there was a lot of times it's a linebacker not understanding what a corner's doing or a safety's doing and vice versa. As you mentioned, maybe a safety decides, okay, I know this play. I know what the team is trying to do. If I jump this route, I could possibly make a play, but you don't understand that you're the last line of defense back there. If you make a decision, then the quarterback either feints to throw to one side or pumps fakes or whatever, then you're leaving the guy high and dry, or maybe a guy wide open. We saw that a lot during that Thursday night football game against the Bengals. So that is a situation where I think the Ravens did the right thing, got together as a group. But also you got to understand with that safety move, moving Kyle Hamilton back in the back end, the Ravens play a much more simplified defense, especially on passing downs. They're playing more dime coverage, less linebackers out on the football field, more corners. So all of that will help as far as communication goes, and also simplifies what you're trying to do. Most of the time you're a body on a body, you're playing man coverage on dime most of the time. So a lot of good things came out of that meeting, and I think it's going to, again, pay huge dividends moving forward. I think for sure, this isn't the last we've seen of Marcus Williams. I know a lot of fans think that, okay, Marcus Williams, obviously less playing time, but as we get into January, December, late December football, you're going to see a lot of teams playing running backs a lot of running games going. And the best way to combat that for the Ravens will be to play big nickel. And playing big nickel means having three safeties on the football field. So whatever the Ravens decide to do, most likely that means having Kyle Hamilton in that third safety spot at the line of scrimmage or close to the line of scrimmage. That's going to give Marcus Williams a little more opportunity. So it isn't the last we've seen of Marcus Williams. At least that's my prediction. But for sure, the Ravens are better prepared to play football with that two high safety look that they've done the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think it kind of got to an all-time low point during that Bengals game, and at that point it's just you have to take pretty drastic measures because you can't have it continue to snowball. And I'm glad that Baltimore was able to kind of nip that away and say, all right, let's get back to what we do. Obviously some of the personnel changes that we've mentioned have been a really big part of that, but I just think coming together as a unit has really helped them. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk a little bit more about what was said in this closed door open forum meeting, and also talk about some health concerns that have arisen with Justin Tucker. Obviously right now there's been nothing to signal anything's wrong, but a lot of people are talking about it. So be sure to stay tuned. We'll talk about that and a lot more on Locked On Ravens. First, today's episode is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks and is completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments with over 500 airlines, 700,000 hotels in their program. The possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. And I personally love using points for travel, and Built makes it so easy to turn rent into rewards. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. We're back to our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin IceShaker and Sam Njoku still here with you, talking on a Wednesday edition of the show. Just a few days away now till the Ravens get back in action against the New York Giants. And in the final part of the show, we'll talk about that Giants game because it might have a little bit more meaning for the rest of the season, particularly in how Baltimore plays it than some people might be anticipating right now. But Sam, just to round out the meeting part of this, I think that one of the things that was mentioned in the article by Sam Cohn was Marlon talked a lot about energy during the meeting. Apparently, Tavius Robinson mentioned that it was big for Marlon, just playing with energy. And part of that is apparently, when somebody makes a play, go hype them up, go celebrate with them, go do your thing, go get hyped up with your guys. And that's some of the stuff that I think we saw in 2023, but hasn't been as present. Like, obviously, Patrick Queen, huge energy guy. Like, he's going and celebrating with everybody after every little thing. And I think that helps just kind of get a defense in a rhythm and in a zone. But I'm glad that the vets spoke up, such as Marlon, who was taking on a much bigger leadership role this season, which has been awesome to see. Roquan, Kyle Van Noy. I doubt this was less so about Nate Wiggins saying, like, oh, yeah, coach, you need to do this. Like, obviously, that's not what's going on in these meetings. But I think as a whole, it's good to see the results come of this, because if this meeting happened and then nothing changed, you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, well, who's really bought in? Who really cares? But now that we're seeing the results and we're seeing all these different ideas being thrown around and hearing about it, I don't know if this meeting ever would have become public if it didn't work and the defense was still playing poorly. But hey, we get to talk about it because it is working. I think that's the best part.
Yeah, as you mentioned it, this defense has turned it around since that meeting. Number one pass defense in the league, Baltimore Ravens. So I think that meeting has definitely worked to the Ravens' advantage. And Marlon Humphrey has, and I wanted to bring it up, has done a great job stepping in as a leader. He has been a leader in previous years, but now, as you mentioned, with the absence of Patrick Queen and kind of this issue going on with the secondary, I think he took it upon himself to be that guy, to step up and be that rah-rah guy for them and actually be a lending ear or someone to talk to. So definitely good shout-outs to go to Humphrey. But to Humphrey's point, yeah, being that team that gets riled up when it makes a play, it's difficult to do when you're a secondary guy and you're giving them 400, 500 yards passing. So just reaffirming that for the guys, even though we may be struggling, if a guy does in fact make a play, be that guy to hype him up, because there's a chance he could come back and have to be that guy to make a play. Having the confidence from your teammates goes a long way. So I think that, again, the meeting was superb. It does happen a lot in the league. I don't want fans to think that this is a once every 12 years type of thing for the Ravens or any other team, but this was the meeting that needed to happen, and the way in which it happened, the reason for it, I think is going to pay huge dividends for the Ravens moving forward. I know a lot of people look at the 2012 meeting with John Harbaugh. That was more of a coaches versus players type deal, more so than the players needed to get together within themselves and kind of the coaching staff taking the backseat and being that guy to say, okay, I don't want you guys to shoulder all the blame, but this is, you guys need to step up and be vocal. So I think that's a great type of environment. I know John Harbaugh gets a lot of criticism, but this is one of the reasons why he's a great head coach, to facilitate this type of environment where you can go together as a family and get together and take those criticisms and be vocal enough, or have the ability to be vocal enough to actually acknowledge your faults and acknowledge other people's faults and stuff like that. So it's a great environment that the Ravens have over there, and I think it's going to pay dividends again for them come postseason time.
Yeah, obviously some distractions, but you move on from Eddie Jackson. Obviously, you figure out the Marcus Williams situation. Obviously, the Deontay Johnson a little more uncertain with that whole thing. But even during his Monday press conference availability, John Harbaugh was very clear in what he said, that he believes that the locker room atmosphere is great, and guys are ready to play, and feels like that meeting could have a lot to do with just kind of what this atmosphere is, because if it doesn't work, you're calling guys out, but that's not the Raven way. That never has been the Raven way. And they don't bring in a lot of guys that have that mindset and mentality. So really good to hear that. Now, the other thing, Sam, as we kind of transition into the Justin Tucker portion of the show, feels like we kind of have the Justin Tucker portion of every show nowadays because of the struggles that he's having. Justin Tucker spoke to the media on Monday himself. He was at his locker. And there has been this, I guess I'll call it a narrative. I don't really know what else to call it, because obviously there's been nothing confirmed, but people are worried for Justin Tucker's health. There was a clip that was put out by Rita Parks, just of him talking, his answer to a question about being back for the bye week. He said he feels good. He's ready to go. He was pretty much at the facility all week, he said, but he said it's good to come back and just see everybody there with him. But I think people are worried or concerned that Justin Tucker's taking this very hard, and he, in this video, apparently to a lot of people, looks tired, doesn't sound right. I didn't read that much into it, Sam. I don't know if you did or not. That's why I want to talk about it. Not so just to analyze a video for 10 minutes during this segment, but just to kind of talk about the mental aspect of this for Justin Tucker, because I don't think anybody is questioning, can Justin Tucker hit a 60-yarder with power anymore? That's never the question here. I think this is about him being in his own head. He's never had to deal with something like this before, at least to the scale that he's dealing with it right now. And I think people are worried and concerned about just how this is impacting him, especially from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah, and I listen, if I was Justin Tucker, just speaking as myself, I would be feeling some type of way as well. I think the writing's on the wall for a lot of fans. They're being pretty harsh on Tucker as far as what this offense is able to do. The defense is finally turning around, and with it being December and January football, the likelihood of the game coming down to a field goal increases dramatically. So I'm sure that is all in Justin Tucker's head. I did see the film. I can't ascertain whether or not he is struggling mentally. I hope he's not. I hope he's getting the help he needs and support he needs. I'm sure he is in that facility. I think that team does a good job of that. But Justin Tucker is, if there's anybody that can get through this slump, is Justin Tucker. And we kind of saw based on his responses that he's been at the facility. He's working on his kick. I'm sure he's finding out that, you got 4 games left and, the Steelers are coming up. You get the Texans, even though they may not be as superb as they were last year, are still a tough out. So there are going to be opportunities for him to be that guy to make a play for his team. And I'm sure it's getting to him whether or not he can be that guy still. Falling from grace, being the greatest of all time, and all of a sudden being the worst rated kicker in all of football, that's a dramatic fall for anybody. So mentally, I understand that as something that he has to deal with. But I'm not sure if I can say with any certainty that he's struggling with anything mentally based on what I saw on that television. But I can tell you that as a player, I've talked to other players in the past, and even after one bad game, you can see players kind of struggle with it. So definitely understand where Tucker's coming from. Hopefully it's not as serious as it may look on camera.
Yeah, and I completely get if Tucker is, feeling a type of way, like you said. And I think mental health, Sam, is such a not talked about thing in sports, but it really is such an important issue to talk about and shed light on. And especially like you talked about, Tucker's been getting fried left and right this season for all of his struggles. And I think that, with the competitor that he is and how much he cares about winning, I'm sure that, when he feels like he's letting his team down in the way that he is, it must be tough. And so I know that a lot of the concerns with the specific video I'm talking about looks like he's not getting enough sleep, looks like he's really struggling with something. Again, we can't speak to that because we don't know, right? We're not going to sit here and speculate for the entire show about what could be wrong or what couldn't be wrong. But if it is something that is going on, this is not a question about his physical ability or his ability to hit the ball through the uprights with the power that he has in his leg. But he also has noted that kicking at M&T Bank Stadium is one of the hardest places to kick because obviously of the different directions and the scoreboards that are coming in. And obviously I don't have the home away splits in front of me, but Tucker has been very vocal about it being very challenging to kick there, which honestly makes his run as the greatest kicker of all time even that much more impressive considering how difficult he's said it is for him. But I just hope that over these last 4 weeks and in the playoffs, this bye week was a good reset for him. And obviously not necessarily in the way of him taking a break from football. Clearly, he made it clear that he was in the facility working on his craft. But it's just terrible to see a guy like Tucker go through this. Obviously, we have to assess what he's been this season, and that has been not good. We can all be real about that. But he's meant so much to this franchise. And look, we can talk about bringing in competition on the practice squad or figuring out what's next for him at maybe after the season. But you just hope that he can be a contributor on the Super Bowl winning team because right now, at the time of this recording, the Ravens have not brought in any competition. And I kind of just expect whether you're on the side of them sticking with him or bringing in somebody, I don't think they're going to.
No, and I think the one kicker that I thought maybe ringing a bell for them as a potential practice squad guy was Parker Romo, but he didn't get picked up. He went to the Patriots. So that tells me right there that the Ravens are sticking with Tucker. They have faith in him. And they're going to ride it out with him for the remainder of the season, which I think is the right call. Now, whether or not he's able to improve upon this performance remains to be seen. I can't speak on that. But when he has kicked, he's still kicking it through the uprights from long distance. I think he had a 52-yarder in the Eagles game, a 56-yarder against the Pittsburgh Steelers 2 weeks prior to that. So it's not like he has lost the ability to make kicks, just the consistency and accuracy, the longevity, having to do that for a long period of time has been questionable. But he is the guy that I believe will be the difference maker for this team. If you want a kicker that has proven to do it in the postseason in the elements, I don't think there's a better kicker in the league that you can count on more than Justin Tucker right now. But, having him be consistent, not miss those kicks in crucial moments will be the deciding factor for this team, I believe, because this offense is obviously going to get it together. This defense is continuing to show strides, and I don't see any reason why that won't continue. And, yeah, it's going to come down to Justin Tucker. So let's hope he gets it together.
Yeah, there is the balance of kind of weighing who he has been versus who he is now. This is a what have you done for me now lately league. And look, if this guy's name was not Justin Tucker and he had the year he was having, he would have probably been cut a month ago.
Oh, yeah.
But in this situation, it's just a matter of who else is out there. You mentioned Parker Roma, who I thought would be a perfect practice squad guy, even if they never planned to use him in Tucker's place just to have the competition. But Cade York now in Cincinnati, it's really only Randy Bullock and then a bunch of other guys that probably wouldn't move a needle. So Looks like it's going to be Justin Tucker, whether you're on that side or not of the conversation, and we will just have to see if he can get it together. But coming up, the Ravens have an opportunity to get together against the New York Giants, and we'll talk about the game a little bit, what it means for them, and a lot more. Stay tuned. Plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by IceShaker. Hey, Locked On Ravens fans, I know you're like me and your holiday shopping list is, let's just say, far from complete. Well, if that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fans in your life. Perhaps you've heard of IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB, and will make the ideal gift. Created by and used by the Gronkowski brothers. IceShakers have sold over 1 million bottles. They have changed the game with workout bottles, and this is the gift you've been looking for. Go to IceShaker.com, use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. IceShakers are kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like the plastic bottles do, and they're third-party tested. They'll hold ice for 30-plus hours. Order your team-branded bottles today at IceShaker.com. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShakers, show your support for your teams with the best brand of workout bottles on the market, IceShakers. We're back. Final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Allstriker and Sam Njoku still talking with you. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form as well here on Locked On Ravens for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Sam, this Giants game I think is a big opportunity for the Ravens. You know, this is a team that struggled to an extent coming into the bye, at least consistency with offense and special teams. Defense, we talked about it. They've been pretty much great over the last 3 weeks. So that's not as big of a concern point, but here come the New York Football Giants, or I guess you're going there. So here you go, marching into the New York Football Giants Stadium. This team has no quarterback. Drew Lock is apparently going to be the guy. Brian Dable looks like he's just a head coach waiting to be fired at this point. They have two really good pieces offensively, and Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy. I think both those players are really great. But they're not going to have Dexter Lawrence, which is a big boost to the Ravens offensive line. Defensively, it's been a little bit of a struggle for New York over the course of the year. I've been saying it all week. The Ravens open up on FanDuel as 14.5-point favorites in this game, Sam. I say you win this game by 2 touchdowns at least. Make a statement against this Giants team, because if you squeak out some 4-point win or 3-point win, I don't know if that makes you feel very good, especially when you're trying to compete for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, if you're wondering whether or not you should bet the 14.5, bet the 14.5. This is a contest, at least on paper for me and what I've seen on film and what we've seen all season, that it's just, this is a gimme game for the Ravens. And if the Ravens had won against the Eagles, I could say maybe this could be a trap game. Maybe the Ravens might eke out a late touchdown to win the game. But after losing to the Eagles, all that things that's gone down with Justin Tucker, your teammate who you had in the franchise for 12, 13 years. Yeah, this is going to be a game where the Ravens are going to come out firing on all cylinders. As you mentioned, Malik Neighbors, the only guy I could think of that can really pose a threat. Drew Lock is the quarterback. Dexter Lawrence not being there to wreak havoc for the Ravens offensive line. This could be a bad game if you're a Giants fan. So I don't expect the Ravens to lose this at all, but I do wonder how they use this as momentum to a gauntlet coming up. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but there is a slate of games that will decide the division starting with next week after this Giants game. So I think this will be a great game. Stay healthy, get a big victory, build upon what you did the previous games, and move forward to end the season strong and the opportunity to potentially be AFC North champions.
Yeah, and we'll get to that stretch in a couple minutes, because I think it is important to continue talking about it, just because, man, the NFL with these schedules, Sam, the Ravens have been They had that one. Remember, they had like what was it? Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland in that, or maybe it was Pittsburgh, Cleveland. No, it was Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland a couple of years ago. And then like Pittsburgh had a bye or something in the middle of that. Like it was ridiculous. The schedule makers for the Ravens have not been particularly kind or favorable. So we'll get to that. But I think with this Giants game, you have to not play with your food is essentially what I'm going to chalk this up to, where we know some of the narrative and a lot of it is true to an extent, Sam, where the Ravens sometimes against lesser teams and lesser opponents just either don't get up for the game or that team gets up for them. And we saw it with the Raiders this season. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the Raiders, Sam, but you want to know how many wins that team has this season? It's not a lot. It's literally 2. It's 2 wins. And
one of them against the Ravens.
Ravens were one of them. So I think this can be a good tone setter game. Is this the most important game on the Ravens schedule moving forward? No, obviously not. But I think that if they can set a tone here, establish some more good habits, it can maybe take them and carry them into a very brutal stretch, which we're going to get to.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the Raiders' loss is unforgivable. But remember, the Ravens are still at that time dealing with their defense, dealing with offensive line issues. So I give them a little bit of grace, but you're right. They do tend to play down to their competition, and that's something they cannot do in this Giants game because they cannot afford to lose another game. The Ravens have to finish this season 12-5 to have a shot at a home playoff game. So the playoffs for me, for the Ravens, start now. Great first game if you're a Ravens fan, if you're playing as if this is a playoff game. But yeah, the Ravens have to get it done, and I don't think they play with their food. They better not, because up next after that is a gauntlet.
Yeah, let's just dive into it, because 3 games in 10 days, Sam, is not easy. Not easy at all, especially, the Giants. And look, I will say this. At least the Ravens are not the Steelers, because the Steelers also have to deal with a 3-game in 10-day stretch. They have the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chiefs. That is just brutal beyond brutal. The Ravens 3 games in 10 days, still brutal, is Giants, Steelers, and Texans. But opponents-wise, that's a lot easier of a stretch. But it can't be understated how big of a challenge this is going to be, especially from just a load management perspective. You obviously have the Sunday game against the Giants. Then you have a short week because that Pittsburgh game is on a Saturday. And then you have an even shorter week because just that Wednesday, you're going to have to play on Christmas in Houston. Again, crazy. The NFL has scheduled 2 away games for the Ravens on Christmas in back-to-back years. That's just, not even really accounting for the human element of all this and having these guys away from their families on Christmas. But regardless, you have a very tough stretch coming up. It's not the Steelers tough in terms of opponents, but you have to be able, especially with the way that they're going to have to maneuver through this, establish more good habits and figure out ways to win, because that Steelers game essentially decides the division if the Ravens lose it. And I think, honestly, when you talk about the North, Sam, I don't even care if it's a win or a loss. I think whoever wins that game wins the North.
Yes, I agree completely. That December 21st game decides the division, in my opinion. And look, the Steelers have had the easiest schedule so far. That changes in the next 4 weeks, but I think we need to take into consideration that the Steelers have literally had the 32nd strongest schedule out of the 32 teams in the National Football League. That will change, obviously, but the Ravens are ranked 8th in terms of strength of schedule. So Ravens have had a tough go of it with the schedule, but they've been hardened. They've been tested. I think we saw a clip of Kyle Hamilton saying that, last year, and I echoed this, I think on this show as well as on my podcast, that, the Ravens last year, they ran through the league. Their first test wasn't until really the AFC Championship game. This year, they've had tests. They've been strengthened by this. They've come together with this. So hopefully that pays dividends for them in the postseason. The Ravens do have a tough schedule with the Giants. That Steelers game, again, decides the division. I can't stress that enough. And then the Texans game on Christmas, that could also decide seeding and things of that nature. So, 3 games to decide it all. And don't count out the Browns either now. The last game of the season, the Browns game, they lost to the Browns earlier this season, so they need to make sure that they win these 4 games, and we'll see what happens. Starts with the Giants.
Lot of upcoming big games for Baltimore. And look, they already have 1 more loss than they did all of last season. And, whether you want to count that Steelers game last year at the end of the year or not, I don't really count it, but we'll say 4 losses last year, 5 already. You have to be able to get it together and hopefully establish, as I talked about, good habits is the word of the day, or the phrase of the day, good habits over the rest of the year. But Sam, I appreciate you as always. Thank you for stopping by again. Be sure to tell people, please, where they can find you and what you're working on as the Ravens exit the bye week.
All right, yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Ravens Talk Podcast. New episodes should be out by tomorrow. You also have me on Twitter X at Ravens Talk Pod, Instagram at Ravens Talk Podcast, and on TikTok at Ravens Talk Podcast, where we talk about the games. We pick games for the week throughout the league, not just the Ravens, and have a little fun. Play some video games, some Madden, some 2K with followers. I'm trying to get into that a little bit to show my support and thanks for all that they've done following me throughout the years.
Hey, I'm a little nasty at 2K. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay,
So, we might have to get something going there. Are you Xbox or PlayStation?
I got Xbox.
I'm Xbox too. There we
go.
Let's
do it.
All right, we're gonna have to schedule this after the show because man, all right, we're gonna maybe do something for maybe we get like a Ravens Creator Tournament going or something.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. We'll try to figure something out most definitely. But of course, the link to Sam's work in the description down below. Be sure to check out all that he does. And as you heard here today on Locked On Ravens, he knows his stuff. So Sam, appreciate you again. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today on Locked On Ravens. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be talking more Ravens football, a little bit more about that Ravens and Giants game too. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.